You're listening to the Cash Flow Academy podcast with Andy Tanner, your source for investing made easy. Here's Andy Tanner.
Welcome to the Cash Flow Academy podcast. I'm your host, Andy Tanner. It's wonderful to have you join us. Very exciting guest. We have Frank Fiume, who is a fabulous entrepreneur. And here we like to make investing and entrepreneurship simple. And it's wonderful to have a chance to speak with people, get their insight, and hear their stories of how they did it. I'm going to let Frank introduce himself, but he is the author of Running with My Head Down, an entrepreneur's story of passion, perseverance, and purpose. So with that, Frank Fiume, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Andy. Thanks for having me on the show. I appreciate it.
To begin, I just want to know a little bit about, if you share a little bit about your background with our listeners, and tell them what brought you to the point where you felt you wanted to share your story with the book.
Well, gosh, as an entrepreneur, I've been through so many ups and downs. I didn't have it easy starting out as many entrepreneurs haven't. But, starting out, look, I was not a business guy. I did not aspire to being an entrepreneur at an early age. I went into college for business, not sure what I was going to do. Ended up going into medical sales as more or less a backup plan. It was the safety plan, and was so unfulfilled and didn't love it. Loved sports and had a background in sports, and thought I would love to apply my passion to actually becoming a business. So despite a lot of doubters and naysayers early in my life, I did start a business. I started an adult men's softball league, and then later a kids flag football league, and then franchising the concept. And, Andy, after I went through all of that over the last 20 years with so many highs and lows, I felt like all of the experience I went through, near-death business experiences, I would have felt like it would have been a waste unless I was able to share out what I experienced to help others. That was the motivation behind the book.
Well, I don't know anyone, Frank, that has climbed the mountain of entrepreneurship and, one entrepreneur year or whatever, and said, well, it was pretty easy. There were no dragons to slay, no failures. I don't have anyone to thank because I did this by myself. You just don't hear that speech. So it's wonderful and inspiring to hear those, those experiences and those stories. And, your focus, you've been interested in athletics. And so explain a little bit about, your business and what you've built today since that first time softball league.
Yeah, sure. So look, I was the kid in elementary school that turned his backyard into a wiffle ball field and had all the neighborhood kids there, and was running leagues and would play board games and create leagues out of that. So I had this great passion for not just watching and playing baseball, but like creating leagues out of it. And after I started my softball league in New York, I thought we were really onto something. So that led me to then running my flag football program in the Tampa Bay area. There was just a tremendous opportunity with the explosion of youth sports and the need for really providing a great organized program. I think there's so many leagues that are out there on the country that are kind of run so-so. They're run by volunteers as best as they can be. And I saw that there was a great opportunity to run a sports program that was well organized. It was about the kids having fun. It was about safety and really convenient for the parents. And I thought there was really a huge gap in the marketplace to doing that, not just through flag football, but through soccer, offering baseball leagues, basketball, lacrosse, and now even Online Sports does volleyball as well.
So it's interesting. The thing I would call folks' attention to is we're going to get with the idea of why run with your head down, not your head up. We're going to get into that. But it's interesting, I think, for people to listen, that as you tell your story, you didn't say, well, Andy, I really wanted to go out and make some money. And so I was thinking, how could I make the money? Where you started more with something you cared about, something you were passionate about, and which is part of your book, Passion. And, it was fun because our producer was telling me a little bit about your story, and she knows that I'm heavily involved in youth sports. I've coached AAU basketball for a lot of years. And I'll tell you, for my son, I was less interested in his athletic ability and wins and losses as I felt that that's such a wonderful place to, there's stuff I learned growing up as a mediocre athlete and a very mediocre athlete in college. But being on those teams and traveling around, I learned about teamwork and pressure and goal setting and consistency of practice and pushing beyond limits. And I felt like those were things that were so valuable to me in business and in life beyond what I could have learned in my math class. Not to diminish the importance of knowing, how to add and subtract and divide and multiply, but I just want to say what you do is valuable to communities and valuable to our citizenship and builds people. Youth sports can be a good thing or a bad thing, but I have to say that the thing I would point out when people often say, I want to be an entrepreneur because I want to make a lot of money, and that's fine. Money can come. That's certainly important to a business, but I think it's striking that when I say, well, tell me about your business, you didn't say, well, we didn't start off saying, how could we make $1 million? We started off with something we cared about. Would you care to comment on that?
Yeah, look, I think passion is so important in your business. The reason why it's so important to be passionate about it is because if you're not hungry for the business and you don't believe in it wholeheartedly, the first time you run into inevitable challenges,
yes,
which we know is going to happen, you're going to give up. You're going to quit. The only entrepreneurs I know that have ever been truly successful are the ones that were passionate and loved what they did. They weren't doing it only for the money. I think, of course, you have to apply great business skills and principles. You have to make lots of mistakes, but learn from them quick, and hiring people and all those things, building scale. But if you don't really love what you do, you're just not going to last. Once you run into trouble, you're going to be out. You're going to say that this isn't worth it. It has to be worth the trouble.
There's going to be adversity for sure. And I think that's a great insight that you share right there is, there's an idea called the entrepreneur myth where just because I know how to play basketball doesn't mean I can set up my own basketball league. Just because I know how to make a sandwich doesn't mean I'm ready to take down Subway. So there are some, experiential and educational aspects. But I think if a person took a moment and wrote down, I'm going to just write down 5 things I'm passionate about. There's probably $1 million idea on that paper. And, a job is something we spend time doing where a lot of people want to get away from that. They're like, I want to get time away from my job. Where you are, I just get the feeling like when you get up to go to work in the morning, that there's an enthusiasm to that. So with that, let's talk a little bit about running with my head down, an entrepreneur's story of passion, perseverance, and purpose. So why don't I run with my head up? Hey, when I'm playing basketball, I'm telling those kids to keep their eyes up, man. Why? Tell me about running with the head down. Why is my head down?
Well, here's my theory, Andy, and that is running with your head down is all about being laser focused. So in baseball, at least you learn when you hit the ball, you're running from home to first, running as fast and as hard as you can with your head down, not necessarily looking up.
The kids want
about being laser focused.
Those kids want to watch where they hit the ball. Once they hit it, they want to see where the ball go. And we want to hit that first base. Let our first base coach tell us whether to turn the corner or go straight, right?
Absolutely. You don't want to be distracted by what's going on around you. And one of the biggest distractions we have surrounding us as an entrepreneur are the doubters and naysayers in our life. Our family and friends, they don't want us to fail, but what happens is the people who are around you, if they can't see themselves succeeding in a certain business, they're only going to give you guidance based on what they see for themselves. And if they don't see it, they'll likely tell you, hey, I don't think this is a good idea. It's not going to work. Maybe they just don't know enough about the business. So if you're going to have a first base coach, so to speak, make sure it's somebody who is aware about the business, somebody who does know it. I hope that my book is really a guiding light for entrepreneurs to say, hey, run with your head down, be laser focused. And my book provides, I think, some great opportunity for details of how I got from first to second and third and obviously to home.
Focus is it's such a difficult thing in life where there's so many urgent things that pull us away that are not important. And it's a huge skill in athletics is to be able to keep present on the task at hand and be laser focused each and every play. And that's a little bit about, there's a single-mindedness to that. And, you say that single-mindedness is required. Now that's That's a huge word. I love the word required. It has an edge to it that it's not the mild or suggested. It's not the mild or recommended. It's not the idea that, well, it'd be nice if we had single minds. You're saying this is required to succeed an entrepreneur. Talk more about that single-mindedness then.
Well, Andy, I think that entrepreneurs, where they go wrong is they try to be everything to everybody. An example of where I made a mistake is when my first business was an adult men's softball league, right, in New York. And then I started running kids flag football in Tampa as a separate business, which was fine. However, when I franchised my concept, I9 Sports, I kind of went based on my experience. I made money in adult sports. I made money in youth sports. So I9 Sports, when it first started, was adult and youth sports because I tried to be everything to everybody. I offered every sport because my mistake was I thought, well, who cares whether you kick the ball or throw the ball or hit the ball? It's just a ball, so it doesn't matter what sport you offer. And that was a huge mistake, something I missed early on to realize that you have to be laser focused and know what you're good at, have your program well developed, because you can't be everything to everybody. And I did learn from that mistake. And we ended up eliminating adult sports and strictly doing youth sports. That's when the brand took off because then we knew who we were. We knew who our target audience was. We were able to market differently. It was the best decision we ever made.
It's an interesting thing because you can be a jack of all trades and a master of one. And talk a little bit more about this because I don't want people to misconstrue this. For example, I care very much about my wife and my family and my boys. Single-mindedness of business, can there be a balance to where you can flip that switch and be single-minded in your business, but still care about your community, still have a good marriage? I mean, I wouldn't want people to misconstrue what you mean by single-mindedness. You're talking more like when we go to work, we're single-minded in that time, correct?
Very much so, yeah. I think life is a balance. If we become out of balance, that's when we start experiencing burnout as an entrepreneur. So having life balance, spending time with your wife and kids, so important because you start if you're just single-mindedly focused, you're not going to end up being fulfilled. There's going to be something lacking in your life. So it's so important to be balanced.
So, part of what the subtitle of your book is An Entrepreneur's Story of Passion. We've talked a little bit about that. Let's talk about perseverance for just a minute. I love the idea of youth in sports because it's so unfair. One of the first lessons I've tried to convince my guys and, my team and my kids is, life is not fair. Referees are not fair. The other team's parents are going to say things that are unfair. Hopefully our parents don't, but they might. The game is unfair. Sometimes you get an opponent that's taller than you. That might not seem fair. And so you're going to hit discomfort. And there's a real blessing, I think, that happens. And this is kind of this is not sadistic, I don't think. At least I hope it's not. But there's certain times, at least in my entrepreneur's journey, where there's a dragon to slay, man. There's something to persevere through. And you place in the world of athletics, you become what's called uncomfortable. There's some resistance physically, mentally, interactive with people. A coach perhaps is getting hard on you, where there has to be some comfort or even an excitement to dive into the discomfort. When we were kids, I had a neighbor who was he was my best friend growing up, and that kid would just eat like a hot pepper just because it was hard to do. So talk a little bit about that analogy or that relationship between sports and business, where if you can get excited or at least find a comfort level about being in those uncomfortable situations, you could probably explain it better than I could. Talk a little bit about the comfort of discomfort. Is that important?
Well, I learned from Tony Robbins early on that all of the progress and all of the growth happens in the zone of discomfort, right? So getting as comfortable as you can with discomfort is going to be key if you want to control and contribute to not just yourself, but the life of others. Where I find that to fall right in line with entrepreneurship is getting out of your own way. So as we start a business, our identity is all with the business. And we come so intertwined together. call that the entrepreneur identity crisis, where we get so wrapped up in the business that us and the business are one. Well, the big danger in that and being comfortable is that when you and the business are one, your mood is directly dictated to how the business is doing. But worse, you start limiting yourself. In other words, if you really, really love your business, then you have to get out of your own way and give your business what it needs. Again, getting discomfort. And what that means is hiring to your weakness. That was probably the best business advice I've ever gotten, is to hire to my weakness, hire leaders, and hiring a COO president back in 2008, right on the front of our Great Recession, was the best decision I ever made. It was uncomfortable to hand over the reins, so to speak, of the day-to-day leadership at first, but it's what helped take our company to the next level, because I can't be the end-all, be-all to my company. If I say I love my business and I'm not just talking, I'm going to walk the walk, then hire to your weakness and hire somebody that's going to help you grow the thing.
I resonate with you on that, Frank, because in my business, it's the exact same thing. Is I'm very, very, I wasn't born with a lot of talents. I'm 6'8", so I can do three things. I can change a light bulb. I could put a star on your Christmas tree, and that's about it. And for some lucky reason, everyone has different talents. Mine aren't very many, but I was able to make things simple. So my job is an educator in our company, and my business partner does everything else pretty much. He has so many strengths. And so, but at the same time, there are times where I'm uncomfortable, where you can't hire that out. And there's lots of types of discomfort. There's fatigue, where you got to fight through. So that's about perseverance for sure. There's frustrations. Sometimes you got to fight through. There's people and adversity, that competitors you got to fight through. But there's a certain type of discomfort that, in my experience and my belief, freezes more people, and it's the type of discomfort that causes more quitting or non-starting than any other else. And that's that emotion of fear and fear of failure and fear. And so, you're going to dance with fear. How do you dance? How do you dance with fear? How do you dance when fear comes in?
Well, I'm definitely not fearless, but I approach fear in a way which I try to be empowered by what's in front of me, and to know that one of the mantras I had as I'm thinking about this, Sandy, is earlier on in the company, when I would struggle and run into a challenge, I'm like, no, we're going to get through this. I believe in what I do, and got through that. And what happened was I sort of started to build the tolerance, where I started to have so many problems in the company as it grew, because that happens in any business, right? I started to have so many problems. The mantra I used to say to myself was, well, I can't quit now. I didn't quit last time I wanted to quit. And I would also say most people would have quit by now. So I definitely can't quit at this point. And when you start saying that enough to yourself, you actually start believing in what you're saying, and you have to be your own biggest fan. Any entrepreneur I've ever known who did not believe wholeheartedly in what they were going to do and not weren't their number one fan, weren't going to survive. The unique experience that I have and I share throughout is the fact that, being that I'm a franchisor, starting a franchise, I've been around hundreds of entrepreneurs who either bought a franchise from me, so they're business owners, or people who were wannabe entrepreneurs and didn't end up doing it. So I've seen success and failure repeatedly, and it's the same thing. It comes down to hunger, dancing with the fear, getting out of your own way, scaling the business. The people that lived in fear didn't grow, didn't succeed in business. They fail. And I think, again, that anytime you make a decision also out of fear, it's almost always the wrong decision. You have to do what's right for your business because it's the right thing, even if it's hard to do. But don't play it safe.
Don't play it safe. We're speaking with Frank Fiume, the author of Running with My Head Down, an entrepreneur's story of passion, perseverance, and purpose. And to kind of reset, before we go in the next segment, to reset where we are, the things I've taken, I take notes when I have a chance to learn from entrepreneurs. The first thing that struck me in this conversation is that, it was more about passion than money. You were after something you were interested in. The second thing was about dealing with strengths and weaknesses and comfort zones and, persevering through those things, having teammates to buoy your weaknesses and let your strength shine. And then we talk a little bit about fear, which is really a non-starter for a lot of people, or when they quit. There's another thing that I think that you could give some insight just in your personal journey on that's extremely helpful is, there's a story of the crabs in the bucket. A crab tries to crawl out and the other people try to pull him down. And that seems a little bit more sinister, misery loves company. But I'll tell you what I think the reality of that is, if you're blessed with people that love you, their fear can seep in to your life. What I mean by that is, there's not a better person that I know on planet Earth. He's just a fabulous human soul, is my father. He's worked. He's a very spiritual man. He has just quietly become a saintly and just everything I wish that I could be in many, many ways. And I remember I had an opportunity, Frank, to hit the speaking circuit for a while. I was a decent speaker. I wasn't great, but I was decent. And I thought, I'm going to go out and I'm going to speak and give speeches. And I remember the first time I walked into his bedroom, and I was, fairly newly married. And I said, Dad, I've got this opportunity. I'm going to take it. And he says, you know what, son, you don't want to do that. All that travel, all that stuff like that. And it was very difficult to go against the advice of my dad. Really tough to do. But in hindsight, it was one of those few, like 99% of the time, I should just do what Dad says, right? He's older, wiser. But what happened, I think, is his love for me is he didn't want to see me get hurt. He didn't want to see me get hurt. So it isn't like our families and our friends are sinister and they don't want us to be successful and keep us down. Like, well, if he goes out and makes money, they want you to be successful, but they also want you to be safe. So could you talk about the experience? I'm always interested in not just the entrepreneur, but what the family dynamic was and what those challenges may or may not have been with you. Did you have parents that just said, "Oh, go for it"? Like Fred Trump's telling Donald, "Yeah, go out and borrow billions of dollars. Go out," But other people, their dad is like, "No." And what was your experience like?
Yeah, so my experience was that when I was at St. John's University going for my bachelor's degree, I really wasn't sure what I wanted to major in. And I learned that they offered a sports management program, which back in the 80s was kind of new. And today it's a popular major, but back then it was kind of cutting edge. And they had internships with all the pro teams in New York City. So, Yankees, Mets, Jets, Rangers, Giants, Islanders, Nets, Knicks, everybody. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is absolutely me. I love the idea of that. And I went to Dad, who I absolutely looked up to, and would always tell Dad, I was kind of looking for my purpose. Like, what am I going to do with my life? What am I going to do when I get out? And he's always like, don't worry about it. It'll come to you. It'll come to you. So he's always trying to kind of reassure me to know that I'd find my way. But I always put pressure on myself to find my way. And when I mentioned to him about this sports management major, he said to me, well, let me look into it. And he had a friend that was an ex-kicker for the New York Jets. And the guy told him, don't let your son major in sports management. He'll never make it to the front office. Only the ex-pros end up playing. And Dad said to me, you're going to be nothing more than a $17,000 a year gym teacher in some elementary school with a sports management degree. So I didn't do that. And then when I was graduating from St. John's in my bachelor's program, I thought, I think I really want to go into sports law and be a sports agent. I took the LSATs, actually scored well on it. I felt like I'm going to go to Cal Western in San Diego. This is what I'm going to do. And I said to Dad, this is what I'm thinking of doing. And he said, you don't want to be a lawyer. There's too many lawyers out there. You'll be $70,000 in debt. And I thought, okay. And he's like, listen, he goes, my dad was in the medical field. And he said, look, these medical sales reps, they call on me in the hospital all the time. These guys make six figures. They have the company car, the benefits, great expense accounts. I can't guarantee I can get you a job, but I can do an interview. And really, Andy, I didn't know what I was going to do, so I went for it. And I got the medical sales job. And I ended up calling on open heart surgeons in New York City and back in 1990, making a lot more money than I ever envisioned. And I hated it. I had zero passion for it. And it wasn't that my dad was trying to tell me, it wasn't that my dad didn't want me to go to sports management just because or not become a lawyer, but he was looking out for me, just like your dad would say, You know, you don't want to do that because, again, they're just looking out for you. I look back on my medical sales time, and this is really important for the audience who is not necessarily doing what they think they should be doing right now, and that is you are learning something right now. I learned a ton from being in medical sales. I learned how to be autonomous, how to sell, how to work in a professional setting. I was calling on multimillionaire surgeons, famous surgeons in New York City. As a 22-year-old kid, I was getting this exposure I never would have gotten otherwise. So despite it looks like the road to success is not a straight line, heck, it's not even, maybe not even at the starting gate, but it's important for your audience to know that what you're doing now, you're going to take those skills, those experiences, and you get to apply it to your business someday.
You know, what a stark contrast to the beginning of our conversation, because this is so valuable, because the thing that was striking to me is you began speaking about your business in terms of the passion you had and the interest you had. And yet in both those stories, your dad said, first, if you do this, you're going to wind up making $17,000 a year. And in the second one, he said, you're going to wind up being $70,000 in debt. Fascinating that our family members think that the purpose of a career and the purpose of a business is money, and instead of a byproduct of pursuing what you're doing and giving value to the world. I'll say it again. You know, perhaps, you know, one of the quotes I love is old Jobs' quote, and it popped into my head as you were speaking. You know, he says, your time's limited. Don't waste it living someone else's life. Don't be trapped by dogma, which is the results of other people's thinking. Don't let the noise of others' opinions drown out your own inner voice. And most important, have the courage to follow your heart and intuition, because they somehow already know what you truly want to become. Everything else is secondary. It just, you embody that. As I hear your story, isn't that fascinating that parents and family and friends that think that your life's work, the purpose of your life's work is to earn money? Rather, no, the purpose of my life's work is to serve others with my talents, and then money can be a byproduct of that if I give it my whole soul, persevere with passion. And it just fits so well with your book, because, you know, you talked about, you know, lastly is purpose. And we've had a chance to talk about, you know, all three of these, and that really kind of brings it full circle. The I-9, you know, why is I-9? What's that all about? Those entrepreneur ventures.
Sure. So after running adult men's sports and youth flag football for kids, I knew we were onto something. I was one of those entrepreneurs, though, that I could not see myself opening up locations around the whole country by just company-owned locations and hiring a whole bunch of people. So I started investigating in franchising, and I thought, wow, what a great vehicle. I had the winning system, operating sports in 2 different states. I knew how to run a sports league professionally, and the key thing, too, for the audience is to be a student of your industry. Whatever you're in, and I don't care how long you've been in it, you never want to stop learning. And I learned as much as I could about the amateur sports industry, and I saw how fragmented it was. And I'd go to these conferences and hear people about who were running leagues or these sports complexes. And the one thing that occurred to me was, oh my gosh, no matter where you are in the country, these folks had the same exact opportunities and the same problems. Yet if you talk to people one-on-one, they would say, oh, no, well, it's different in my area. In my area, I have X, or I have this problem. They were all having the same problem, Andy, and I thought, I can franchise this. I know that I can go into a market, and I think I can really attract the audience of people who are specifically looking for having their kids in a program that's fun, safe, convenient, no fundraisers, no tryouts, no drafts. And I built I-9 Sports with that foundation, and it became it was a hit right away. Today we have over 900 locations in 30 states nationwide.
You've got like 2 million kids registered to play, right, in different sports and communities, right?
Since 2003, we've registered 2 million kids. We're in 900 locations, 30 states. It's run by 150 franchisees. Each one of our franchise owners runs multiple locations in their territory. And so we adapted what I did successfully back in the 90s, late 1990s and early 2000s, and we've morphed and evolved into this franchise concept that has really, it's really taken to something, and I'm so proud of it.
When you get a couple million of anything going or 900 of anything going, there's going to be some financial rewards to that. But what's been the most fulfilling? Is it the money in the bank account, or what is the most fulfilling thing for you?
Oh my gosh. Looking back, the most fulfilling thing that has ever occurred to me, and it's on different levels, but I would think that number one, I'm kind of thinking about all these at once because there's so many. Number one is franchise owners who tell me that I've changed their life, that they were unhappy in what they did for a living, and they took a chance on investing in this franchise, and they make not just more money, but more impact on people than ever before. And they love what they do. Secondly, having parents email me or put on social media that their kids' lives have changed because of sports and because of the way our program is. Whether a kid was more introverted and didn't break out of his or her shell, and once they played in I-9, they felt welcomed, or the kid that is on the spectrum of autism and wasn't necessarily welcomed in a league and plays in iron sports and is welcomed by the other kids, or the parent that says, I'm so sick of the tryouts and drafts and these fundraisers and everything. And I-9 is not like that. And it's about having fun and seeing their kids' lives change and be more confident. I've gotten so many of those over the years. It still doesn't. I'm still in awe of this company, honestly. I'm only the founder, okay? This company is built based on having great management team and an outstanding cast of franchise owners. And I just get to be blessed to be the guy that started it, but it is far grander than me.
So there's a couple of valuable things we hope we accomplish with this podcast. Is number one is education, to learn more, but possibly more importantly is inspiration. It's my hope that as I bring, people like you, Frank, and these guys are kind enough to, donate their time to be on a podcast and share their story. I hope it's not only education, like what should I do next? What are the important things? How do I deal with fear? How do I hire people? All this. But I hope it's inspiring to people. So let's say someone's listening and they felt a resonance with you and said, you know what? I like the idea of money being a byproduct. I like the idea of shedding the advice of others who are all scared for me because they love me. I like the idea of finding what my passion is. Got any advice for that person who's listening who says, hey, whether it's with you or someone else, maybe I'll look at a franchise. Maybe I ought to take the jump and try the shot to be an entrepreneur. Anything you'd say to that person?
Well, that person, if they believe they can go for it and has the mental capacity of withstanding, stress and challenges in a business, then they need to go for it in their life. They need to find that business or find that passion and absolutely pursue it. I think we've been put on this earth to follow our dreams. I don't think we've been put here for a plan B for the backup plan. To me, plan B is a cop-out. And if somebody's interested in learning more, they could go to my website. It's frankfiume, Fiume.com. I'm also really active on social media, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook and Twitter. And it's Frank Fiume II is my handle. And I just think that people really need to go for what they love in life. And I think that ultimately our purpose is to be fulfilled. And for me, it has been using my enthusiasm and my creativity to inspire others. That's my mission. That's my purpose. And my mission has continued to evolve. First ABA Sports and I-9, and now this to help others through my book and speaking.
So a couple of resources. I'm never apologetic about suggesting people learn about entrepreneurs, investors that we have on the podcast. If I were to say, hey, Frank's willing to take you out to dinner and share his story and stuff with you, would you go? And they say, well, absolutely so. I go, would you buy Frank dinner if he did that? Well, absolutely so. Well, you can gain a lot more than just in a dinner than just go ahead and reading. So, it's brand new, just released, I believe, just coming out, Running with My Head Down, an entrepreneur's story of passion, perseverance, and power. You can learn more about Frank's story there. And let me get that website out once more, Frank. It's www.frankfiume.com, and you can learn more about, just delightful to speak with you, sir. And, there's such a, not everybody is as good as guys like you are. There's certainly people who are greedy and certainly people who are money hungry, but I'll tell you, there's such a stigma that grows sometimes in our country and around the world that, people that have become successful, they just want to make a lot of money and they'll step on everyone to do it. And when people get to hear your story and your tone and your genuineness, I think it really is a wonderful message that many people have become successful because they want to give value to their community and they're working on projects they care about. I think you fit with my friend Josh and Lisa in that, you're a social entrepreneur and that your capitalism efforts benefit the greater good of our society. So I thank you so much for your time. I hope you come back. And any final words to leave with us before we end?
Well, thanks, Andy. I would say the final thing I would tell people is live your life with absolutely no regrets. That means you always do what's right, even if it's scary.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. You've been listening to the Cash Flow Academy podcast. Thank you again, and we'll see you guys next time.
You've been listening to the Cash Flow Academy podcast with Andy Tanner. For more information on investing made easy, go to thecashflowacademy.com.